Hey, one more thing before you go. What if we had an opportunity to get a review of our lives from a past life and how it relates to us in the present? What if we didn't have to wait to die to go to heaven? How about a way to discover your soul's true purpose for this life and why advanced souls choose harder ones? In this episode, we're going to answer these questions and more when we talk to a woman who shares her experience and how you too can experience it as well. I'm your host, Michael Herst. This is One More Thing Before You Go. My guest in this episode is Vondi Lozano. She's a Michael Newton Institute certified Life Between Lives facilitator. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. Vondi was led to life between life hypnosis by her dog, which helped prepare her for the loss of her disabled mom, which we're also going to touch on. She has a background as a licensed marriage and family therapist and is a psychology professor who was featured in Cosmopolitan, LA Parent Magazine, and the Wall Street Journal. And in this episode, she's going to provide us with a glimpse into the afterlife. We all want to know about that and what our souls do after we die and before we're born into a new life. Welcome to the show, Vondi.
Oh, thank you, Michael. So happy to be here with you. Thank you for the invitation.
It's an honor. It's an amazing opportunity that you give to people to kind of give us all. I mean, we all want to know a little bit about the afterlife. We all want to know about reincarnation. We all want to know about what is there on the other side. So I'm really excited about this conversation. Thank you for joining me here.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I, as you know, on some of my podcasts and everybody that joins us on these conversations, I start at the beginning. So let's start at the beginning. Where'd you grow up?
South San Francisco, Bay Area.
San Francisco. So you're a California girl.
I am a California girl.
San Francisco was kind of cold in the wintertime.
Right. Yeah, cold and foggy.
Cold and
we lived
foggy.
under a fog bank. I didn't know any better. So when I came to LA for college, I stayed because there was sunshine.
So what was it like growing up? What were your parents like?
My parents loved me very much, but they were teenage parents and a lot of pain, a lot of trauma, a lot of substance abuse. So it was a challenge, but again, I didn't know any better. I was the good kid, the overachiever, and it worked for me until I got a little older, and that's how I ended up in the therapy field, was exploring my own personal journeys and working all that out.
From that perspective, you have any brothers and sisters?
I have a sister 2 years younger.
2 years younger.
And we look like twins. So if you ever see anybody that looks like me, but they don't recognize you,
it's your twin. I can say, wait a minute, I do know you, kinda. I know you adjacent. Kind of one of those things.
We're actually not twins. We just look like twins.
Just look like twins.
Yeah, well, people would mix us up in school.
Well, my brother will get mad at me for this. Luckily, my brother and I don't look the same. And I'll just leave it there.
Okay.
You wouldn't confuse us. So you left there to go to university. Where did you go to university?
Azusa Pacific University. It was a Christian college down in Southern California.
Now I know that you're a psychologist and a therapist. Did you go there to be a psychologist or a therapist?
Well, and actually, it's a therapist. Psychologist is a doctorate in psychology. I have a doctorate, but it's academic. I know that sounds silly, but so therapist, yes. I went there. Well, actually, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I wasn't ready for the big league colleges, just emotionally. I just think I wasn't up for it. And the church was part of what saved me. And then, of course, later on, I had to be sort of saved from that. But initially, it was a community for me that really helped. And so I went to a small Christian college, and that was the main reason I went there. But I did study psychology as well as Bible, bit of biblical literature.
Biblical literature. You know, it's an interesting that you've gotten into. And I grew up Catholic, so when I say this, it's interesting that you've evolved into your new line of work, which what we're going to
Absolutely.
delve into,
Yeah,
especially coming
exactly.
from that
I've come
perspective.
a far journey from where I started. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's I'm not a practicing Catholic. My views have changed. I'm still a spiritual individual, and I believe in God, and
Mhm.
I believe in angels, and I believe in the afterlife, and that's where that's where in reincarnation. That's where the Catholic Church
Mhm.
and I kind of parted ways. So yeah, it's interesting that you kind of moved into that. What got you? I know that you had some losses in your life that kind of put you in a new direction. Can we talk
Mhm.
about those?
Yeah, and just to kind of
Oops.
back up a little bit, I actually started on this journey when I was around 30. I had a really serious health crisis, and I Western medicine, I didn't find any help, and so I started working with a holistic healer. And she was very psychic and very open spiritually, and I started having kind of psychic dreams and hearing voices, which I never like to say because in my field that sounds really bad, but getting messages. And so that's kind of what started it. But again, I was teaching at a Christian college. I was back teaching at Azusa Pacific, and I was teaching. And so I was kind of half in, half out. So that's where I started, I would say, the awakening. My holistic healer would say, sometimes that's what it takes to open you up. But the losses were when I lost my dog. And I'm always embarrassed to say that because it was just a dog, but I was
Dogs are family.
devastated. Yeah. And there were some other things that kind of made it more complicated, but yes, I was devastated. And so I had already been doing hypnosis as a talk therapist, and one of my friends that I trained with said, you probably know about Michael. No, she actually said, would you like to go to see this medium who connects with people and pets on the other side? And that was where I learned about Michael Newton, was the mediumship teacher. I was taking his classes and workshops because I was so enthralled with the afterlife, and it was the only thing that brought me comfort. And so that's where I learned about Michael Newton. And then that gave me something. My mom and I, before she passed, would talk about the afterlife because I would share all the things I was learning. And she didn't completely understand it all, but she was open and interested. And so that's what kind of helped prepare me and us for her passing, which came a little bit later.
Yeah, it's interesting the way. Well, earlier, growing up Catholic, like I said, um, I kind of went almost the same route in regard to that. I grew up with dysfunctional parents in the first place already. It must have been the generation, I guess. It kind of put me in the direction of being a cop. But that job opened my eyes to a lot of the possibility of what we're going to talk about.
Hmm.
And you mentioned that you were practicing hypnosis. So I'm
Hmm.
familiar with some of what you're doing here because while I was in law enforcement early on in my
Oh,
career,
yeah.
I
They
became
use it.
an investigative hypnotherapist or hypnotist, not hypnotherapist, but an investigative hypnotist, where I was certified in that, and it was new, fairly new, and we were regressing people back, which I know you'll understand. We
Mm-hmm.
were regressing victims back of violent crimes and things like that, so that
Hmm.
we could kind of evolve their memories, awaken those memories of certain things that they were um, closing off that they
Hmm.
didn't want to remember, and it allowed
Hmm.
us to continue an investigation and open and explore.
Wow.
Unfortunately, we weren't allowed to bring that into court with us.
Of course.
At
Yeah.
that time, it was kind of one of those things, people thought it was hokey and
Right.
didn't think it was really worth anything. But in reality, it panned out a good portion of the time. We were able to
Hmm.
take a partial license plate and turn it into a full license plate,
Hmm.
and then that in turn match it to the car that was seen in the area, this kind of a thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, it kind of worked out really well, I think. Um, so after you saw the medium, you and the holistic, I appreciate that too. The holistic approach to life, I think it allows us a more relaxed vision into what the
Hmm.
possibilities are. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Well, and for me, it just started opening me up to there's more than this life and validating, validating my experience. My whole family is a little I don't know what the word would be, but a little, we would call it intuitive, I guess.
Right.
Or, we would be the kind of family where we would say, someone would call and they would say, "Oh yeah, I was thinking of you," but like, and then they would call, kind of thing. So, and I
Connected.
would have, yeah, very connected. And I would have sensations as a kid, but I didn't know what to do with it. And so it always kind of scared me because, in the Christian world, all of this is
Yeah.
really bad and evil, basically. So the holistic healer, it was kind of like I sort of got pushed a little bit out of my comfort zone. And then I always say, only my little dog could have pushed me all the way out of my comfort zone into opening me up to the afterlife in the way that happened.
So that loss within itself, the loss of your fur baby,
Yeah, my
I would
fur
call
baby.
ours a
That's what
fur
the
baby.
medium calls them. Yeah, my fur baby.
Yeah,
Exactly.
we call ours. It a lot of people don't understand. I believe that our pets, our animals, our family, our fur babies all have a soul, and that those live on. And we can communicate with them here, and we can
Absolutely.
communicate with
Yeah.
them on the other side. So I applaud that, that you moved in that direction. I think that it allowed you to become more intuitive, more open to what's on the other side, which is a really good thing. Um, how did that help you? I know that you lost your mother. You said your mother was disabled.
Hmm. So she was paralyzed at age 9 as a child. She was never supposed to sit up or walk, and certainly not get married and have kids and have a life. And she did all those things, but she used a crutch most of my life as a kid and was in a wheelchair later in her life. But she had had dozens of surgeries and never fully regained the use of the lower half of her body. And so it was a very, very, very hard life. In fact, in jumping ahead a little bit, in the Michael Newton Institute Life Between Lives, the general gist of it is the more advanced the soul, the harder the life. So when my mom and I would talk about this and I would tell her what I was learning, I would say, "I don't know what you were thinking, Mom." And she would say, "Me either," that she chose such a hard life. But yes, it gave us um, a way to talk about this life and the afterlife. And even right before she passed, we had some really important conversations.
That's interesting. Yeah, you mentioned that about the. I must be a really advanced soul.
Probably.
I'm gonna I'm gonna tell my wife that 'cause every time next time I really say why, I'll just have to tell my wife, remind me of this, will you?
Mhm.
um, so, so getting into past lives in what you call the life between lives.
Mhm.
Let's talk a little bit about life between lives. What is life between lives, LBL? And you reach it through hypnosis,
Yes, yes, and yes, LBL, exactly. That's
LBL.
kind of how we refer to it, but life between lives. So I'll try to be succinct, but the general gist of it is Michael Newton discovered it by accident. He was a psychologist doing hypnosis, and he asked a woman to go to the source of her loneliness. But instead of going to a past life or something earlier in this life, she went to the time in between life. So, what we would call heaven. And she was with her soul group. We all have a soul family that we incarnate with over and over. And it turned out no one in that life had incarnated with her in this life. And that was the source of her deep loneliness. So Michael Newton went on to do 7,000 cases without telling anyone because he didn't want his research to be contaminated. And they all said basically the same thing. And he wrote that up in Journey of Souls. And he's written several other books. And he's since passed on, but the Institute has certified about 200 of us who now can kind of carry on this work. So it's a way under hypnosis, you can go to the time in between your last life and this life. And I can talk more specifics about what we encounter. But there were basically certain stations that people visited. And then to me, the one that got my real attention was the place of life body selection, where you found out why you chose this life. What's your purpose? Why are you here? So once I recovered from my grief, I was like, holy cow, if we could all discover why we chose this life and what's our true purpose, like, wouldn't everybody want to do that? So that's what Life Between Lives is.
Yeah, I find that really, really, really interesting because my wife and I have had other discussions, and I've had some discussions with people on this podcast in regard to aspects, but it was explained a little bit differently. like
Hmm.
where you just talked about going to kind of see why we chose this life.
Hmm.
It's been told to me as a book of records or a hall of records where you go
That's
in
one
and
of the places people go.
here's the hall of records. You go up
They
there
call it
and
the library, Akashic Records, Hall of
Akashic record
Records.
it is.
They call it different things. Most often, they call it the library,
And
but it's
there's,
where there are books of all your lives. Go ahead. Sorry.
oh, no, I was going to ask you that. Go ahead.
Mhm. And it's different for different people, but there's books of all your lives. You can check out the book of Michael's life in, 1,000 years ago. But there's also people have gone in and they pull books off the shelf about things they're interested in. Like I had one man pull off a book about love, and a heart hologram burst out from the book.
Wow.
And it gave him information about how to find love in this life. Someone else, their son was an addict and suffered from addiction and some other things. So they were looking up books on the brain and telling me all these things that I couldn't even understand. But there's also the
Interesting.
books of our own lives as well. And sometimes they can step into the books. And anyway, so kind of like a hologram.
Now,
So yeah.
do you think, from your experience and what you've learned here, because giving us a glimpse of the afterlife, as you
Mhm.
said, does it allow us to reflect on, um, is our fate set in stone when you talk about that, a
No,
book like that? Or,
no. Yeah, it's a little complicated because it's a little bit of both and, but basically you get to find out like why did I choose to be Michael? Why did I choose this family? You can even see the options you turned down. So there might have been three top choices, and your guide might have said, "Well, we would really like you to take the Michael life because you're going to learn a lot in that life." And you might have said, "Well, I'd really rather go and be rich in Hawaii." And he said, "Well, let's try
absolutely.
this one." Yeah, and you said, being the advanced soul that you probably are, you said, "No, I'm going to sign up for the heavy duty stuff." So you can see why you chose the life. You can even see the people you're going to work with, some of the ways you're going to know who you're supposed to connect with, and what you're here for. But think of it as like trajectories or potentials. And that's why one of the things the council tells people over and over, that's another place people go, is where they meet with wise souls that oversee all their lives. But the council will say, um, relax, don't take life so seriously. Um, Basically, don't worry if you don't get it all worked out, because there's always a do over. And there's a do over in the sense that there's always another
Mm.
life if you're still incarnating. But also, if you miss the lesson initially, there'll there'll be another opportunity. Feel like, think of it as like the trajectory kind of just shifts and it goes this way. It goes a little bit different direction,
Mm.
but there's still an opportunity to still learn that lesson. So no, we still have free will, but we do have certain things we want to accomplish, and then sometimes people don't accomplish their goals.
Right.
And I've had sessions where when they cross over and their guide meets them, we discuss, how did you do with this life and the goals. And
And that
if you
sounds
want
good.
later on, I have a really funny story about someone whose guide was really pissed off because they were screwing up.
Absolutely. We have to touch back on that. I do have a question that was raised in
Okay.
the discussion we just talked about. Um, about the council. One of my
Hmm.
well, my wife and I's favorite movies is Defending Your Life. Um,
Hmm.
and Meryl Streep and I always forget this guy's name.
Is it Robin Williams? People keep telling me to watch
It,
it, but I haven't seen it.
it's not Robin Williams. He's a fantastic comedian. He just passed on a few years ago. Actually, well known. Um, this movie, Defending Your Life, is
Hmm.
just a very. You got to watch. You just have to watch it.
I
And
know everybody always tells me, and I just forget. I'll have to put it in my list.
yeah, and basically it's about this guy dies unexpectedly, and so does she, Meryl Streep, and he's like, this can't be it, and he gets put into a holding pattern, and obviously this is not all about the movie, but it's about kind of what we're talking about.
Hmm.
He gets put into a holding pattern, and then he gets assigned this guy to kind of guide him through. Let's see where you're at in life. Let's look at back at this life, and find out
Hmm.
where you made mistakes and where you can change. And then
Hmm.
let's go look at some of your past lives. And I won't
Hmm.
give anything away but there's some really
Hmm.
funny moments in that, especially the respective look at both Meryl Streep next to him and then him. He's kind of going,
Hmm.
geez, I could have done. I could have taken her life and instead of this one that I took, which is what you were just
Mm-hmm.
talking about. So I find that kind of
Mm-hmm.
ironic that he
Mm-hmm.
wrote the movie like that and did this. Um, do we get do we get something like that with the council that you're talking about? Is that sort of like a review of your life?
Yeah, it's kind of the high point for me doing the session most of the time, because the council is where we go before wise beings, and the council is different for everybody. I've had a fair number of advanced souls come recently, and the council is made up of really interesting characters, kind of like out of that Star Wars scene in the bar. I had one recently where two recently where there was an alien on the council, if you want to talk more about that, that
Cool.
appeared as a reptile, some Greek gods, Yeshua. They don't call Jesus Jesus, but Yeshua, the actual incarnated Jesus, and and sometimes they just are beings in Greek robes in a like a marble hall. Sometimes they're sitting beside a river, and the wise beings are trees. But more often they're beings or light beings, or for advanced souls, kind of alien or very higher beings. But there's specific questions we ask, and then we also go off grid, of course. But it's basically, how is this soul doing? How are they advancing? What are their goals overall as a soul through all their lives? And then every now and then we'll look at a past life and how does that relate. But there's a little bit of, how are they doing? How are they doing in this life? And this is also where people can bring specific questions about this life, like about their career or their work, or why am I struggling with this issue? And they'll remind them, oh yeah, you're struggling with this issue because you wanted to develop compassion. So you're in this situation, or you're a very brave soul and you take on these really, really hard lessons. I've had people with Holocaust past lives, and they were told, you're really brave, but you need to take better care of yourself this time. Um, so it's a bit of a review, but it's not even specifically a review of this life. It's more a review of their overall progress as a soul. And this life is just one piece of that. But we can get information about this life and how it fits in with everything. I don't know. Did I answer your question?
You did, absolutely. I mean, and the whole thing of it is we all want purpose in life. We all want to know why we're here. Why, why this, why that, why. I mean, I was a police when I told you before, and my listeners know, my viewers know, I'm a retired cop. That's what I chose to do for a career. That's why I loved being a cop. I was a really good cop.
Mm,
Put a lot of bad guys in jail, and then I get injured, and then I continue. And I'll be honest, and people have known part of my journey. I was in a wheelchair. My daughter pushed me around, and both my daughters pushed me around in a wheelchair. My wife had to walk me to the toilet. It's kind of one of those things where you question. I was a good cop. I wasn't corrupt. I wasn't.
right.
Forgive my language. I wasn't a butthead.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of go. I got angry. I got depressed. I got, the whole gamut. I grieved
Sure.
for the loss of all that, and then I questioned
Right.
why. I thought this was my purpose. I was doing a good job. I was on my way. I was a
Right.
sergeant. I was on the way to lieutenant. Those around me, people work with me, went on to be a lieutenant, captain, commander, assistant chief, chiefs. That was what I thought was my trajectory, my path. And I got thrown off that path. And the question was why? And I still,
Yeah.
occasionally, I still kind of go, why? But then
Yeah.
I found I had to reinvent my purpose. And I was able to find that purpose because I did connect a little bit more with the universe and what was being
Right.
told to me. And my daughter helped me
Right.
that immensely. My oldest daughter
Yeah.
helped me
Yeah.
immensely with that. And I found out that, okay, well, maybe my purpose, that was part of my purpose to learn some of that. And
Right.
part of my purpose was to be a good person and be a good cop. And I mean, I caught two of America's most wanted, really bad
Wow.
people.
Wow. Wow.
So there was a reason for me being in that job. But now
Sure.
there's another reason for me being here, and it's allowing me to kind of motivate and inspire and educate people with regard to hope. I was told by 5 doctors I'd be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. I am not, and my puppy's not here, so I can sit up, I can walk, I can stand. I walk 2-3 miles a day.
Yeah.
I can inspire people, motivate people, tell them that there's always another way. There's always a way around
Hmm.
this. So I was able to find my purpose. Everybody wants purpose. So,
And I heard just now in my head, they had a higher purpose for you. You had a higher purpose. And
well, a
I think
hybrid.
this is it.
Thank you. That validates that very much.
Hmm.
That to me, that touches me a little bit, a lot actually. Um,
Hmm.
the we all would like to know. Everybody wants to know. Just like with the afterlife, everybody wonders what's on the other side. My father-in-law,
Yeah.
before he died, he was very atheist, and he goes, "When you die, you just go to a dark place. It's just dark. That's all
Hmm.
you do. You just experience dark." Um, we have found out when I spoke to another medium actually on the show who did not know anything about that. And
Hmm.
this is all along the same line of what we're discussing. Um,
Sure.
she just out of the blue at the end of our conversation, she said, "Hey, there's a guy that is trying to come through." And she described my father in law to a T and
Hmm.
said, "He's trying to get a message to, assuming your wife." And so I brought my wife in here. She was working from home that day. And she said, "This is so and so and so and so. He's talking about this, talking about that." And it wasn't dark, you know, he met, he was more close to his, that's a good English, isn't it? I have a master's degree. he, he
I
was,
understand.
he was closer to his grandparents than he was with his father and his mother. So he met them on the other side, and he says, "Oh, yeah, the only complaint I have is there's no scotch over here." Well, that was a clue because that was his favorite drink, see?
Right.
So my wife
Right.
goes, "Oh, wow." So it gave us the opportunity to kind of learn more of the fact that, yes, there is something on the other side. And yes, that door is
Absolutely.
open. And we all want to know what happens when I die, what happens when I
Yeah.
go. You mentioned, I think I may have meant it, I may have had it off of your website or in some of the research I've done on you, but you mentioned the hit movie Soul, which is a
Oh, yeah. I love that movie.
fantastic
Yeah.
movie. Love that
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
wife and I've watched it several times. We love that movie. Um, the and everything about it, the stuff that it won, uh, the music in it, everything just really resonates. Uh, is that kind of can we relate the experience that you just talked about similar to that?
I think there's a lot of similarities. I always say they got a lot right. There's parts that I didn't agree with, like the slug chasing the little souls around in the afterlife. I don't get a sense that that's there.
They needed some
But
drama.
yeah, thank you. And then they also had the great before, and then they had another higher escalator going up to the great beyond. But the one thing I think they did miss is they didn't realize those are the same places in the afterlife. So the place we come from and the place we go back to are the same place. So it's almost like we just keep getting recycled back into this life. And we don't always come to Earth, we go to other places and eventually we stop incarnating. But yes, I had one of my former clients tell me that she actually saw what the little baby souls saw in the nursery when they were peering over the edge of the opening to slide down into Earth. She said, "That's what I saw."
Oh, that's
So I think
amazing.
they got a lot right.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's
They do.
amazing. So,
Hmm.
and I know you mentioned this earlier that we pick our lives, we pick our families, we pick who we want to go with. Sometimes we question that, right? Growing up with the
Yeah. What
dysfunctional
was I
parents that I did.
thinking?
Exactly. But at the same
Hmm.
time, it also allowed me to be a good cop because one of the reasons I became a cop was because
Hmm.
of those experiences. I was a
Absolutely.
DUI cop for a long time because my father was an alcoholic. Both my parents were.
Hmm.
Then
Hmm.
there was um, I also was a domestic violence. I worked 4 years with a domestic violence task force, and that's all we dealt
Hmm.
with was domestic violence. So
Hmm.
that allowed me to contribute back to society from that perspective. So
Right.
I am grateful to a certain perspective in regard to that,
Hmm.
and also made me a better father, and it made me a better parent because I thought, I'm
Hmm.
not going to, in no disrespect, if you're still listening,
Hmm.
it allowed me to understand this is what I'm not going to do.
Hmm.
I'm going to ensure that my kids don't grow up in that environment, and my
Hmm.
kids are going to have the opportunities that I did not have based upon that experience. So yeah, I think that that works. Um, we've talked about reincarnation and the fact that we reincarnate and through different lives,
Hmm.
and we talked a little bit about regression. because I mentioned about my
Hmm.
my hypnotism experience with
Hmm.
regression. Can we distinguish between past life regression and life between lives?
Hmm. Yeah, thank you for asking. So let me think how to say this. I know a lot of people are probably familiar with Brian Weiss. He's the one who sort of popularized past life regression. He was the psychiatrist who, sort of like Michael Newton, he stumbled on
Right.
it when asking someone to go to the source of her anxiety, and she went to a past life. So traditionally, we've thought of past life hypnosis as, what is the purpose of, well, let me back up, like looking at, like, how is my anxiety related to a possible past life? So, and I'm just going to differentiate between the two. Whereas even Brian Weiss felt that there was this in between place. He just didn't explore it in the same way that Michael Newton did. So in Life Between Lives, we don't just say, how is my current issue related to a past life? We say, how is my current issue related to the fact that I chose this life, and how does this life, sorry, I got a little allergies, fit within all those lives? So when we do Life Between Lives hypnosis, we actually incorporate past life hypnosis. We do the first, it's a 2-session process. So the first session is a past life session, and you cross over into the afterlife at the very end and meet your guide. So it's just a little taste of the afterlife. And then the second session, we do your immediate past life, because that's our entryway into the afterlife, into the time before this life. So we do your past life, and then we say it's like a near death experience, but without the death. You cross over, but a near death experience would stop after a certain point because you would come back to life. With this, you get to continue and spend the bulk of the session. The experience is the time between your last life and before you became Michael. And why did you choose to be Michael? And there's several other places that people can visit, and I'd be happy to share a little more about those if you like.
Sure. If we could talk about that, that would be great. I think that, like I said, we all kind of want a glimpse. We all want to know. I mean, I don't want to give away all of your secrets. Obviously, we want people to
No,
come
that's okay.
visit
You
you.
can know it all, and everybody will go to different places anyway. But so we would do, like I said, if you were coming in, we would do your past life session with a little bit of afterlife at the end. And we navigate around in that life and find out and release. Sometimes there's healing, there's things that people still need to release. And then the second one, we do your immediate past life. Same thing. We will go around in the life a little bit, release anything that needs to be released. And then you cross over. And from here on out, I'm just like holding on, because the first one, I kind of am navigating around. I have a little bit of an outline of where we're going to go. In the second session, your guides are running the whole thing. So sometimes you meet your guide. The more advanced souls don't meet their guide when they cross over. They just go right to the middle of the Life Between Lives, because they don't need that like orientation time. So they'll pop right into their soul group usually, or some other places. So these are some of the traditional places Michael Newton found when he did the book. Now it's a little more varied, but initially it was, people would usually meet their soul guide, and, or excuse me, spirit guide. And their spirit guide, your spirit guide has been with you since your soul was created. You were your spirit guide's graduation present. So when they stop incarnating, then they take on a new soul, and your spirit guide took on you. So he's or she has been with you since your soul was created. So you meet your spirit guide. That's often a really emotional reunion, because you've been together for thousands of lives and thousands of years. Then people, if it's been a hard life, will often go to a place of healing, um, a waterfall, a crystal bed. It's different for everybody. And we'll take a little time there to sort of recharge. So that's why it's different than just traditional past life hypnosis that says, how did we carry stuff from life to life? It's not like karma and we're carrying stuff. I think my email just went off. Let me close that. It's more that you chose these lives because you're working continuously on these lessons. So, the place of healing, then people often go to their soul group, and that's where you encounter the 10 or 12 or 20 beings you incarnate with over and over. And this is the really fun part, is we get to say, okay, so the first being that approaches you, are they male or female? And they'll say male or female. Who were they in the last life? So your last life, Michael, will say, was Sam. Who were they in Sam's life? Oh, this was Sam's brother. Oh, okay. And you'll connect with that. And then we say, and who is this being in Michael's life today, and you'll be like, oh, it's my best friend, or it's my son, and that's where the lights just start coming on as you get to see who these people are. And sometimes people are surprised who's in their soul group. Their ex-husband might be in their soul group. They're like, what the heck is he doing here? But before this life, you guys got together, and said, I'm going to be the bad guy and you're going to be the good guy because you want to work on strength, and I need to work on compassion or something like that. So soul group, and I could go on. Council, place of life, body selection, other planets, other dimensions, labs, classrooms.
There's a whole variety. Now, from my Catholic background, I have to ask you this: is there
Sure.
a dark place? Is there like hell? Is there some kind of a dark place?
Nope. No dark place.
What about karma? How does karma play into this effect? Because I've studied
Yeah.
Zen and Buddhism and a whole bunch of different philosophies from my conversations, actually, in regard
Right.
to different philosophies of life, different religious philosophies in life. What about karma?
It's not karma like in the traditional sense that I've heard of it, which is, like I'm being punished or rewarded for past actions. Again, it's more, well, actually, I just had one session recently. It's the Molly session that you and I talked briefly about. I have that new podcast, Soul Guide, and Molly was one of the most recent sessions. And they said she had some fear, some karma that she was working on. So they were encouraging her to have adventures in this life, to just clean up the last of that fear. So it wasn't like she's being punished because she did something bad. It was more they're trying to kind of get this soul to have a little more strength and embrace her power. So it's really more, we choose lives for a lesson, not we're being punished by some outside forces for something we did or didn't do. It's a real different view on karma, I would say. That's my experience.
That is, yeah, it's kind of a unique view of karma.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you kind of wonder about certain individuals within this world, like the Jeffrey Dahmers, and I mean, from my old profession, we dealt with individuals that were just evil, and did evil things to people, and you kind of wonder whether or not they're going to get karma or justice in regard to that. I know you mentioned.
Can I say a little bit about that? I can
Absolutely.
respond to that.
You bet.
Because Michael Newton, in some of his books, they push on that subject a little bit more. And basically, people always say, what about like Hitler or something? And so the gist of it is that some souls, if they can't be repaired or healed or basically rehabilitated, they use the word like reconfigured, like their energy is reconfigured. Almost like they're sort of, I want to be careful because I don't want to overstate it, but just for the most part, we all choose these things, the good and the bad roles, to develop something in ourselves or to develop something amongst sort of the universal consciousness, or we're all trying to learn some lesson together.
Right.
But he does address that. Michael Newton wrote about that some souls, he was asking somebody over and over, what about this? What about that? And they said, some souls could be reconfigured. So I picture like clay being like remolded. If it wasn't like fixable.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And it gives us some kind of a I won't say satisfaction, but kind of satisfaction to know that they won't continue to come back and do the same thing over and over and over again. They get away with the same thing over and over again from that perspective. We talked about the soul groups. Do we find our soulmate there? I mean,
Oh yeah. Oftentimes there's a primary soulmate, which is a soul that you incarnate with over and over. And very often it's a romantic partner, but not always. Sometimes in this life, they might be your best friend or your police partner, or, but it's often someone we have many lives with as a romantic partner. Yes.
Oh, it's interesting. I believe my wife is my soulmate, currently here on Earth. I mean, we're celebrating 33 anniversary this year, the 33rd.
Congratulations.
And through everything, the rehabilitation, the operations, the
Mm,
everything. She's been really a rock solid individual and
mm,
has been with me through this whole journey, along with my kids. We've all taken this journey together, and I'm very,
mhm,
very grateful that they're part of my lives. I have to put that out there. Um, when you mentioned spirit guides, do we all have our spirit guides? I believe in spirit guides. I call on my guides all the
mhm,
time to ask for help and to whisper in my
mhm,
ear and give me guidance
mhm,
and kind of push me forward. Are those the same guides that we meet if we take this journey for the
mhm.
life in between?
Usually, in the first session, we'll meet your spirit guide usually at the end, and then most of the time, that's who shows up to greet you. Though, like I said, advanced souls sometimes just skip the spirit guide greeting and jump right into the middle of the life, and the spirit guide may show up later on somewhere in there. But yes, we all have a spirit guide.
That
Mm.
works. I wonder. This is just a little humor. You have to bear with me. I wonder if,
Of
like,
course.
in because I flash back to Soul when he's trying to jump into other, he was trying to jump into somebody else from up there. It's like, no, I'm not staying up here. I'm just going to dive down into there.
Oh, right,
Um,
right, right, right.
is that possible?
I don't think so.
I had to
I
ask because
think
it's in the movie, right?
no, and I've heard people talk about this, but I don't
Yeah.
think so. At least that's not what we've found.
Yeah, that have a. It would be like my job here on Earth was the cop. You'd have little angel cops trying to catch these.
Oh, right. Okay, so I'm not remembering exactly this part of Soul, but you mean like the spirit guide jumping into the life with him? Is that what you
The
mean?
no, the spirit. He wanted to jump into somebody down on Earth. He didn't want to reincarnate back as a baby. Um,
Oh, he wanted to like hijack somebody's
yeah,
life. Yeah,
hijack
no.
somebody else.
At least that's not my experience, and I haven't read anything about that in the Newton
Mhm.
books or anything. No,
Yeah,
I
that
don't
was.
think so.
I think that was fun for just fun for the movie.
Hmm.
Excuse me. Well, I got through most of this without coughing.
I think you're doing great.
Um, you say that we don't have to wait to die to go to heaven. We can go there now. Is that part of the LBL?
Well, to me, it's the easiest way to understand the place in the afterlife is what we would traditionally call heaven. So, yeah, I feel like everybody who's interested can have a session and they can find out what they do in between their lives. So, the place you'll go after this and the place you were before, it's all the same place. In fact, most people refer to it as home, and that is real life. This is where we come just to practice our lessons. This is where we come to do our
Mm.
like field work, if you will. That's home. I've had souls. In fact, you were going to say something else. Otherwise, I was going to keep
No,
going.
no, go ahead. Keep going.
Oh, I've had souls say, this is more like home than anything I've ever had on earth.
Oh,
It's
that's very
just,
interesting.
and even just recently, the Molly session, in the middle of the session when she connected, well, even the first session when she just got a glimpse of the afterlife, she said, I miss them. And she started crying. And then in
Mm.
the second session at the soul group, actually at the council, it became clear that she was training for this kind of higher order in the council. And she just said, I miss them. And they were trying to entice her to kind of get these last lessons worked out in this life so she could stay there.
Go
Because
there.
after a point we advance, we don't incarnate anymore. So it's amazing to me. The connection is so strong. Literally, people burst into tears because it's like, oh, my people. That's what she kept saying to me when we were talking about it later. My people, they're my people. How could I have forgotten my people? Is what she said.
Now, do you think time is different on that other side? In that
Hmm.
for in regard to, let's say that my father up there is still waiting up there. My father might still be there. He died in 1977.
Hmm.
Is there a time limit up there in your experience that they have to be within that arena before they incarnate back down again, or is there a
Mm.
fairly quick turnaround?
Well, I have a whole bunch of thoughts that came on the time thing, but let me start with the first one, which is we used to wait longer to reincarnate, but now that there's more of us on the planet, we're coming back more frequently. But yes, time is very different up there. There was one thing I heard where it said, I went and talked to my spirit guide and we had a little chat after my life. And they said how someone asked how long was the chat, and it was something like 10 minutes our time, 20 years your time. Just the time is very,
Wow.
very different.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's significantly different.
And I even can I throw in one more piece?
Absolutely.
I'm going to take a little drink here. Hold on. I even had one person not that long ago. Um, in fact, it was Brian. He has a podcast, Grief to Growth. I'll just throw that out there. But he came on the show to share about his sessions because I did his sessions.
I watched him.
Okay, he's great. Well, in his soul group, it wasn't just his people, it was all his past life selves, because he said the lives are all happening simultaneously, which I've heard before, but it's hard for me to wrap my brain around it. So I try not to think about it too much. It kind of blows my mind.
Yeah, that
But
concept is wow.
so they would say all time is now time. So while you're at your council, between your hypothetical Sam life and your Michael life, in between, we can ask questions about this life, even though you really went there after the last life, and we're asking questions about why you chose this life. But we can also, because all time is now time, ask them, well, what's going on with my daughter? Or why do I need to do this? Or what should I do about this? So time, I just say time is very bendy.
That's well, Einstein kind of said that time is all loops
Mhm.
back in within each other. Yeah,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
that kind of makes a lot of sense. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, earlier you mentioned you had a funny story, and I was
Oh,
it's probably going to be related to my next question about what people seek out on the LBL sessions.
okay.
Does it relate to that, or is it just something
Um,
completely funny, different?
Not it's completely different. It was like a rogue session, but it was when I was brand new and it was really interesting. So, let me ask your other question. People are usually seeking out their purpose. So usually people are at some sort of a crossroads and they're like, what is going on? And every now and then it's just people want to know, heck,
Right.
I just discovered this. I want to know, what is my purpose? Why am I here? I mean, that's why I did mine. I was like, holy cow, like who wouldn't want to know this?
We all want to know that. I mean,
Hmm.
again, my story earlier, I thought I was on one purpose, and turns out I'm on another purpose.
Hmm.
And it just makes me happy. I mean, being a cop made me happy too, but I was also
Hmm.
tired and grumpy and
Hmm. Mhm.
and
Mhm.
put on a lot of weight. Not from the donuts.
Mhm.
I was a bagel cop. I love bagels, not donuts.
But it's
Um,
hard work, emotionally hard
it's
work
hard
for
work.
sure.
Got called out all the time. Lack of sleep, switch shifts all the time.
Mhm.
Stress constantly. And so yeah,
Mhm.
there's always. But I'm grateful for the experience and the people
Mhm.
that I met there and the people that I've dealt with. I've had felons that sent me a card and said, "Thank you for changing my life,
Mhm.
because you treated me like a person and not like a felon."
Mhm.
And because of that, I changed my life. So, things like that
Mhm.
made me feel good for what I did. Now you have a funny story.
Okay.
I got to hear that.
So, yes, and it's funny because the person is really private, and initially they didn't give me permission to share anything before the session, but afterwards I said, "Oh my gosh, can you please give me permission to share this story?" And she did. So, this was the session. I was still pretty new, getting my certification, so just sort of learning how to do all this. And the person, when they crossed over, so they were a Wall Street person during the crash. And after the crash, they kind of gave up and just took a kind of a silly job and sort of lost interest in life. Well, when they crossed over, after they passed, they were met by their guide, and their guide was pissed. He was annoyed, and he told them they had to go right back in and incarnate again because they had wasted that life. And I was like, okay, that is not in the book. That's the one thing they told us. They never go right back in because there's this whole life between lives. So I was like, okay, is this guide playing a trick on me? Because sometimes they do. And it turned out he was upset. So we went to the place of life body selection, even though we just got there. And even the life body selection people were kind of looking at each other like, I don't know. And the way it works is they're seeing everything and then they're saying it back to me. So it's not like a medium where I'm giving them the information. They're seeing the movie and they're telling me what they're seeing. So anyway, all the she called them Jesus men looking people in the place of life body selection were like, well, I don't know what to do with this soul. And so finally we figured out a place to go where there was some higher wisdom. And she went to, quote, Mr. Mighty, who she said was dressed like looked like a cross between Santa Claus and a king. He had like a staff and a robe, sitting in a throne. Um, and she said, this is where you go when you're in trouble, like the mean supervisor when you're in trouble.
Principal's
And
office.
I'm like, it's all, they told me it's all love on the other side. Like, how is this possible? And then when we got there, Mr. Mighty said, child, you need to shape up or we're not going to let you incarnate anymore if you keep wasting lives, that she had given up in that life. And they were upset about that. And so I was like, oh my goodness. But it ultimately was a loving message because Mr. Mighty said, I'm so sorry I was so hard on you in that last time. And now she's too hard on herself. So she kind of needed to lighten up. So ultimately, it was a loving message. But initially, it was Mr. Mighty and she was in trouble. Oh, and then when we went to her soul group, they were sitting, smoking, drinking, laughing in a pub with a fireplace. Um, and their names were, her name was Camille. That's what her guide was calling her. Camille, Camille, Camille. Eventually, we found out her name was Bliss, but her name was Camille. The other souls were named Roger That and Hell Yeah. And they were just kind of rogue, smoking, drinking, laughing, wild souls. And I was brand new and I was like, holy cow.
Yeah, walk into that room. That's really interesting. That would be an eye opening. Like
I was. It's a hold on to your hat experience.
holy
Mr.
smokes,
Mighty. hmm
being called into the principal's office and getting
Oh,
handed
and
up.
then before she incarnated again, everybody was sitting around the Jesus men, Mr. Mighty. Everybody was kind of sitting there, kind of wishing her well. And her guide was kind of like a wait and see approach. Yeah, I don't know. So
Yeah,
it was pretty crazy.
the smoking, the drinking, and all those other names. The kind of hell no. What'd you say? Hell no, hell yeah.
Hell yeah, Roger That. Those were her soul group
Those are her
people.
soul group names. Yeah, that sounds like a bunch of good old boys sitting around a fire
hmm
pit and
hmm
having a good time. That's really
Exactly.
funny. Um, let's talk about how somebody can take their own experience, get to meet you, get to talk to you, get to understand how they can meet their spirit guide and receive guidance and, just take a journey.
They're welcome to book a discovery call on my website, lifebetweenliveshypnosis.com. And it's just a call where we can chat and find out what questions they might have and see if it might be something that would work for them. And then also, Michael, we mentioned that I started a podcast a couple of months ago, and it's called Soul Guide. So if anybody wants to listen to some of these stories, we have about 10 episodes so far. We're doing it every week live, actually, Fridays at 12:30 Pacific time. But it's on YouTube, Facebook, which is our Life Between Lives Hypnosis Facebook page. And then it's on all the podcast channels as well, Soul Guide.
And links
So
to that are
they
on your website, lifebetweenliveshypnosis.com, correct?
we're getting in the middle of putting up a media page. We're just kind of getting caught up because it sort of has taken off. So it should be up there soon. But it's on Apple and Amazon and Spotify and everywhere if they just look up Soul Guide.
I'll find it for you and I'll put it in the show notes so that everybody has a direct
Thank
link
you.
so that they have it there. Bondi, if somebody wants to connect with you and they want to be able to explore this option into getting a glimpse of the hereafter or the afterlife, or a glimpse of heaven or the in between,
hmm
I know that we talked about your website and how to get there and so forth, but do we have to do this in person or can this be done remotely?
Yeah, great question. So I invite people to come to my office in Southern California, but we can also do them remotely. I've done someone in Canada, I have someone booked for the UK next month. So, yes, we do them remotely. In fact, pre COVID, the Newton Institute only allowed us to do them in person. But with COVID, they expanded and they let us
Mm.
try it. And it took off so much that now we're able to reach people in places that, because there's only, like I said, a couple hundred of us that can now go into all kinds of places that we didn't used to be able to reach. And we just do a little Zoom pre-session to make sure the camera is working, they can hear us, we can hear
Mm.
them, and all that. Um, we just do that complimentary beforehand. And then, yeah, it works beautifully. I always tell people the guides don't care if we're in the same room or other planets. I mean, it just makes no difference. So they still get what they would get, whether they're in person or remote. So thank you for asking.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Vondi, I really appreciate you spending the time on the show here today and sharing those journeys and sharing your journey. Especially, I think that it's given us an opportunity to kind of inspire people and motivate people, educate people in regard to what lies beyond, and that we all have an opportunity to take a glimpse of that like we all want to. So thank you for being you. Thank you for taking a new journey for yourself and then sharing that with us.
Oh, thank you, Michael. It's my pleasure. It's great to be here.
This is one more thing before you go. So before we go, do you have any words of wisdom?
Oh, wow. I should have thought of that, huh? One more thing before
That's
we
what
go.
I'm here for. See?
Oh, I was just going to say, when I had my sessions, they told me to stop being a talk therapist and to do this. So my one more thing would be to find your whatever do this is and do that.
Excellent.
And I think this is yours, Michael.
Thank you very much. Those are excellent words of wisdom, and thank you for the kudos. I appreciate that as well. It kind of makes me feel good to know that I'm in the right place at the right time. So again, thank you very much for being on the show. Thank you very much for sharing your journey. And everybody needs to take a glimpse of the other side. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Again, thank you very much for joining us on this program today. We really appreciate each and every one of you. Please do not forget to subscribe and or follow us. And we can be found on every platform out there. Do not forget that we have a free app on iOS and Android, Google Play, for One More Thing Before You Go. Just look for that, where you can have instant access for everything. One More Thing Before You Go. Check it out. And don't forget to follow us on social media as well. And again, one more thing before you go. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to this episode of One More Thing Before You Go, a unique conversation about life. If you like our show and want to know more, check out our website at beforeyougopodcast.com. That's beforeyougopodcast.com. Tell your story, share your expertise, contribute to the blog, and subscribe to the newsletter. You can find us as well as subscribe to the program and rate us on your favorite podcast listening platform.
And one more thing before you go. Have a nice day, have a nice week, and thanks for listening.
One More Thing Before You Go, a unique conversation about life podcast, is a creation of One More Thing Productions, established 2010, all rights reserved.